Welcome to Nice and Blunt. I'm Adam Mariancho, and it's Saturday. Time for the injury report. We're going to tell you every team in the league, go through every matchup, tell you which players are in and out. We already had two teams play, the Chargers and the Vikings on Thursday, so not going to bring them up. There's also 6 teams on bye, so if you have any Arizona Cardinals, Detroit Lions, Jacksonville Jaguars, LA Rams, Las Vegas Raiders, or Seattle Seahawks, we're not going to talk about them in this video. Let us begin in Atlanta, where the Falcons are taking on Miami, and I think they're going to start Kirk Cousins. It's still a game time decision, but Michael Penix Jr. is questionable with a knee injury, and if you watched last week's game, Michael Penix was taking some rough shots, so he was limited all week in practice, and I don't think he'll play. It sounds like he's trending towards being inactive despite the limited sessions all throughout the week. So we know Cousins is chomping at the bit to get in the game, and perhaps he opens the door for a trade, but in my opinion, that just locks him into Atlanta if Penix is a bit shaky to go. But in terms of their receiving core, interestingly, Drake London was added to the injury report earlier today. On Saturday, they are marking him questionable, and on Friday, he was limited with a hip injury. So that's not a good downgrade. I don't like late in the week, especially after practice is over, for something to crop up. He is a true game time call, and honestly, I'm not sure if London will play. So if he does not, Darnell Mooney will be an automatic start. Mooney would be fantastic. And I also think Kyle Pitts would be way more interesting. Kirk Cousins doesn't have the best chemistry with Pitts, but he does have good chemistry with Mooney. Mooney played really well last year with Cousins. So Mooney's actually not quite been the same type of fantasy option with Penix under center. All in all, it helps Bijan the most, but I do think Darnell Mooney becomes a legit top 25 receiver. I think he would be a good start if London is ruled out. So some moving pieces for the Falcons, but against the Dolphins, they can probably tolerate the risk. I still think they're going to win. Backup running back Tyler Algier is questionable, though, with a knee and hip injury. He was also getting banged up last week, but he was limited in practice all throughout, and he is a game time call. I am expecting him to play. There's no real sign that he's going to be ruled inactive. I'm not worried about Algier, but Penix and London, not so sure. In case Algier isn't active, I love this matchup for him, actually. So Nathan Carter would be the next man up on the depth chart, but I'm not going to pick him up off the waiver wire and start him. If Algier is not on the field, you're only trusting Bijan and Mooney, and then maybe you'll consider flexing Kirk Cousins and Kyle Pitts. The matchup for Cousins, not bad. But on the defensive side, linebackers Divine Diablo and Jalen Walker, their rookie, I believe, first-round pick, both out, along with their nickel cornerback, Billy Bowman. He's been out for about 2 straight weeks. On the opposite side of the ball, in Miami, we all know that Tyreek Hill has been on IR. He's out for the year. But Darren Waller was also placed on IR earlier this week with a pec injury. Not sure how long that'll take, but given the state of that franchise and the fact that Waller was just retired like 2 months ago, I don't know if Waller's going to come back as quick as possible. So while he's out, Tanner Connor will run the routes at tight end, but I'm not interested in Tanner Connor. If anything, I think Malik Washington will get extra targets alongside Jalen Waddle. So that helps them a little bit, but in reality, it just hurts Tua and the offense. The Dolphins are dead in the water at this point. Their defense, though, is pretty healthy. They're just bad. They're terrible. In another game, we have the Ravens and Bears battling it out in Baltimore, and this was a bit of a shock. Lamar Jackson has been ruled out with that hamstring injury. He was limited in practice, I believe, on Thursday and Friday after not practicing Wednesday, and I guess he's just not ready. If he was good to go, I'm sure he would play. I don't view Lamar as someone who's not engaged, trying to miss if he can. So that's really bad news. Their season is kind of on the line. If they don't go 10-7, I don't see a playoff spot for them. If they lose, that's 1-6. I would be worried with the Ravens, but Cooper Rush will get the start. That's the main reason to be worried. The Bears defense gets a massive upgrade, and then everyone on the Ravens offense gets a big downgrade. I'm not going to trust Mark Andrews as much anymore. Flowers is a big liability, and then even Derrick Henry, probably not as many touchdown opportunities, but he did play well last time we saw him against the Rams. So maybe they're not just dead in the water. They still have some good players. I doubt they just quit, but if anything, I'm just more interested in the Bears defense in fantasy now. On their defense, though, they are getting healthy. Linebacker Roquan Smith is active, and same goes for cornerbacks Marlon Humphrey and strong safety Kyle Hamilton. Both of them are active in the secondary. So at least there's that. But damn, if they lose this game, John Harbaugh could be on the chopping block. In Chicago, opposite them, DeAndre Swift is questionable, and he did not practice Wednesday with a groin injury. But on Thursday, Friday, he was limited. And if you've been focusing on his practice reps for a while now, this is the 4th week this season where he doesn't practice on Wednesday and then is fine, good to go on Sunday. So I'm not concerned as long as he doesn't miss more than one practice. I think it's just the planned rest for DeAndre Swift this year, and I'm fine with it. I don't think it's a problem. He's pretty good, a good veteran. He's had some injuries in the past. I'm happy that they're doing what they can to keep him healthy. So he's playing great matchup for him. Love Swift. I think he's a must start. After 2 elite games off the bye, the Bears look like a run-first team. But Roshan Johnson, the backup, is out, so that means Kyle Monangai is that much more safe of a bet. He also had a big role last week, but it was a bit of a blowout against the Saints. It wasn't as competitive. I'm not fully sure if Monangai will have the same role every week. But in the tight end room, Cole Kmet is out with a back injury. So we've known this all week. Loveland has an opportunity to step up, but I don't really trust him yet. Perhaps on National Tight Ends Day, he does get going. But kicker Cairo Santos has missed the last 2 games. He is expected to play. He's questionable. And they have bumped down Jake Moody back to the practice squad. So Jake Moody loses all value. Santos, not a terrible kicker to roster, but given he was just injured, maybe we pump the brakes on picking him up and starting him. But cornerback Tyreek Stevenson on the defense has been ruled out, and same with cornerback Kyler Gordon. He was placed on IR. But cornerback Jalen Johnson, who's been on IR for weeks now, I think might miss the entire season. He just underwent core muscle surgery, and I don't expect him back until at least late December, if not next year. So their defense has gotten better, but is banged up in the secondary again. And then in another matchup, we have the Bills and Panthers. Let's talk about Buffalo, where tight end Dalton Kincaid is questionable with an oblique strain, and he did miss the previous game before the bye. But given he was limited that week in practice, then he had a bye, and now he was limited all week in this practice session, I think Kincaid will suit up. He's a game time call, so make sure you're actually getting him healthy, but I do assume he will suit up. If not, Dawson Knox has a really good matchup here. It does rank top 10 against the Panthers, and I could see a touchdown easily for Knox with no Kincaid. But if Kincaid suits up, he's been the safest bet in that offense other than James Cook and Josh Allen. So best pass catcher available, I would 100% start Dalton Kincaid if active. I assume he will play. In the receiving core, though, Josh Palmer is out. So I did mention Curtis Samuel has a revenge game here. He was drafted by the Panthers. Perhaps he is an interesting long shot candidate, but I'm not going to start him unless it's DFS, and I'm getting crazy. But on the defensive side, it looks like cornerback Maxwell Hairston, their first round pick this year, has been on IR all season, and he has been upgraded to questionable. So expecting him to play, he will make his rookie debut in week 8. Safety Taylor Rapp, though, was placed on IR, so they lose someone and then gain someone. Defensive tackle Daquan Jones also out, and then linebackers Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard are questionable for the Bills. For the Panthers in Carolina, Bryce Young has been doubtful all week, so we've been expecting Andy Dalton to get the start. I really don't know how that impacts the receiving core. I want to say Tet is a little more interesting, but honestly, that feels like a shot in the dark. I have no fucking clue. And I don't think that Legette's production last week was really correlated with Andy Dalton. Last I checked. I didn't watch that game super closely, but I don't think the touchdown came with Dalton. So I don't really trust a Panthers receiver. I could see the Bills defense play better given they lost their last 2 games off a bye. I see it as a get-right game, but mainly for the offense. I still think the Panthers offense will be fine. At least there's some garbage time available as well. But on their defense, linebacker Patrick Jones was placed on IR over the last week. In Cincinnati, the Bengals-Jets game, everything is the same for Cincinnati. Joe Burrow is on IR. Not sure when he's coming back, but hopefully before the season's over. And then Mike Gesicki, the tight end, also on IR. But Tanner Hudson, I think, will suit up. That makes Noah Fant less safe of a bet. Last week, I was interested in Fant because both Gesicki and Hudson were out. This week with Hudson coming back, I don't trust Fant very much. But on defense, it looks like Trey Hendrickson is going to play. He did not suit up last week on Thursday against the Steelers. So he's their best player. That's definitely a benefit to their defense. And then on the Jets side of the ball, this is a weird situation with the Jets offense. Tyrod Taylor was presumed the starter all week, and now he is ruled out with a knee injury. So perhaps some mind games going on with the coaching staff, but in reality, I just think Tyrod is hurt, and it is what it is. They will roll out Justin Fields as the starter. So love this matchup for Fields. Top 10 for quarterbacks, and then top 3 for running backs. You know he will run the ball effectively against the Bengals. So I think he's a very compelling streaming option this week. Perhaps you got fed up with him and benched him because he got benched, maybe even dropped him. But I think Justin Fields would be one of the safest plugins to your lineup if you are trying to replace Lamar Jackson or have a different quarterback on bye. Justin Fields has the highest upside of any streamer. However, I think I'd still rather go Aaron Rodgers. I think that's still my preference if I'm streaming the position. But Garrett Wilson remains out with that knee injury. He did not practice at all this week. And then a big shocker, a player who had 9 targets last week, Josh Reynolds, their number 2, is also out. On Friday, he did not practice with a hip injury, happened late in the week, and he's not going to suit up. So a completely up for grabs target share. I think this matchup really benefits Mason Taylor. So that's really the only pass catcher I'm willing to trust for the Jets. But he's not even a lock to play. Mason Taylor is questionable with a quad injury, and he did not practice Thursday, but then on Friday he was limited. And according to Coach Aaron Glenn, the quote I wrote down is that those players that are questionable are trending well. It sounds like Aaron Glenn is optimistic Mason Taylor will suit up. But you need to make sure this is not a safe bet, but there's no real competition for targets other than Breece Hall now. So I could see in an amazing matchup, the best you can find for tight ends, Mason Taylor going off. He has multiple games of over 60 yards this year. I like Mason Taylor as the best streamer. You just have to make sure he's actually healthy. That is a questionable situation. If he doesn't suit up, then Jeremy Ruckert would get the good matchup, and I'm not going to start Jeremy Ruckert. So weird things are happening with the Jets. Reluctantly, I think I'm still going to pick them to win, but it's all going to hinge on Breece Hall's availability. Breece Hall is the key this week. The matchup is great for him and Mason Taylor, and as long as he's healthy, I'll stick with my pick of the Jets winning this game. But he's questionable, limited in practice Wednesday and Thursday, but he was full on Friday. So I fully expect Breece to play. Backup Braylon Allen has been on IR, and Isaiah Davis, maybe you're willing to handcuff him, but I don't think he'll be relevant this week. Give me Breece Hall as a must start in the top 12. I think Breece will play well. But their backup running back, their backup tight end, and another backup receiver are out as well. The Jets are very banged up. And then on defense, linebacker Cam Jones has been ruled out, along with cornerback Sauce Gardner. He is not going to play, and maybe I am just like begging to be wrong, but I am going to remain stubborn and still pick the Jets to beat the Bengals, despite no Sauce Gardner, no Garrett Wilson, no Tyrod Taylor. Fuck it. Give me the Jets over the Bengals. Anyways, let's move on to the next matchup. The Cleveland Browns take on the Patriots, and for the most part, there's a lot of healthy players in this matchup. David Njoku, though, is getting healthier, questionable with a knee injury, did not play last week, and he was limited all week in practice. I do think Njoku will play, but he's a game-time decision. You got to make sure, and if he does, that's a bummer for Harold Fannin. I did drop my rank on Fannin because I do think Njoku will suit up. So if Njoku doesn't play, then Fannin would be like top 10, but if both are active, then neither, I think, crack my top 12. A little less exciting in a positive matchup against the Patriots for tight ends. But their defense is pretty healthy. However, Cedric Tillman is on IR. They do have a bye in week 9. I don't think Cedric Tillman will be back until week 10. And because of the bye, there is still a chance that they play it conservative with Njoku. If he's not lobbying to play and he's not fully cleared, I could see them hold out Njoku with the bye next week. So maybe Fannin is a safe start, but at the moment, I think Njoku will play. And then for the Patriots, overall, they're extremely healthy. Stephon Diggs, who was limited in practice earlier, has been ruled active. He was full on Friday. He's good to go. No injuries otherwise since Antonio Gibson was placed on IR 2 weeks ago, at least on offense. On the defensive side of the ball, safety Kyle Duggar is questionable. Otherwise, everyone for the Patriots is healthy. In Dallas, the Cowboys are traveling to Denver to take on the Broncos, and their offense is overall pretty healthy. Miles Sanders is on IR, but Jaden Blue is irrelevant. Left tackle Tyler Guyton, though, is questionable. I think he will play. He did miss a game a few weeks ago, and I think he'll be all right, but is not 100%. A game time decision. We'll see about their left tackle. Cornerback Trayvon Diggs on the defensive side was placed on IR. I'm not quite sure how long he's going to be out, but at least 4 weeks. Trayvon not available. So their secondary's been ass. It's probably going to be even worse. I would upgrade Cortland Sutton and the other Broncos pass catchers even more without Trayvon Diggs. And then their safeties, Donovan Wilson and Wanye Thomas, both of them are also out. Linebacker Demarion Overshone still remains out as well. And then rookie cornerback Siobhan Revel Jr. is also out. So a lot of injuries in the secondary. And then lastly, their defensive end, Marshawn Nealand, also questionable. I think he'll play, but not a guarantee with Nealand. For the Broncos, they're one of the healthiest teams in the league. It's pretty shocking, the lack of injuries on their roster. However, they are dealing with a suspension, 1-game suspension for linebacker Dre Greenlaw. I think they'll be fine. I'm not that worried. If anything, it might benefit Javonte Williams if a backup linebacker can't tackle him as well. In the Packers-Steelers game, let's talk about Green Bay for a second. They did activate Christian Watson, who's been on IR since last year. So that's great news. I'm really hopeful for Christian Watson. Kind of a quick recovery time as well. He got hurt in January, and this is fantastic. So I'm optimistic for him, but honestly, the receiving core gets pretty crowded, especially when Jaden Reed comes back. So hard to trust someone, especially in his first game. I doubt I'm dying to plug in Christian Watson, but the matchup's not bad. The Steelers corners got fucking torched by the Bengals. So perhaps he does play well on Sunday Night Football. He will make his debut. And Dontavian Wicks has been ruled out with a calf injury. So that does open up the door. It's not like he's competing for 20% of the routes. He's actually taking somebody else's routes that was running consistently in the offense. So that is hopefully optimistic for Christian Watson. He could be a big part of the offense this week, and especially because Matthew Golden is also questionable with a hip injury. Matthew Golden was limited on Friday, and he is a game time decision. If you were planning to start him, I think you should be picking up Christian Watson as a backup plan. I don't feel too confident with Golden in the first place, and if he's not 100%, he may not get as many targets, may not run as many routes. He might not play at all. So if you are planning on starting Golden, you need a backup, and it's Sunday Night Football. There's not that many other games to pivot to. There's either Christian Watson, Calvin Austin, or one of the tight ends in this game, or you have to look to the Commanders-Chiefs game, and that is very random. I don't know if I trust one of the waiver wire flex options in those games. No thanks at all. So I would be rostering Christian Watson or Calvin Austin, or at least have somebody else on your bench available to pivot to if you are planning on starting Matthew Golden. Not sure if he will play. But because of all of these injuries, I think Romeo Doubs is a much safer play. Romeo Doubs is running all the routes, has a good connection, has had very good games this year. I am bumping up Romeo Doubs with some confidence, given the injury to Golden and Wicks and Christian Watson coming back for the first time this year. Their kicker, Brandon McManus, is questionable, limited on Thursday. He has missed the last 2 games, but I think he will suit up. He is a game time decision, and I think McManus will be back for this matchup. On their defense, they're very healthy, except for defensive end Lucas Van Ness. He was ruled out for the Packers. On the Steelers side of the ball, they're extremely healthy overall. The only questionable starter would be center Zach Frazier. He is a game time decision, and that could be relevant, but overall, not the end of the world to be missing the center. But maybe a botch snap, maybe Rodgers fumbles randomly, could lead to some problems, but overall, not that big of a deal. But like I said, everyone else is healthy, including Calvin Austin, who did miss last week's game, and I think the week prior in Dublin. So Austin will play, he is active, and Rodgers has a deep threat He didn't have that last week against Cincinnati. In the Texans-Niners game, there are a lot of injuries to speak of. For the Houston Texans, wide receiver Nico Collins has been ruled out with a concussion. He did not practice at all this week, so that opens the door for Jaden Higgins, the rookie second-round pick. But their slot receiver, Christian Kirk, will miss his second or third game in a row. Christian Kirk has been out for a while with a hamstring injury. He did not practice either. So Jalen Noel has been stepping up in his place. I like Jalen Noel quite a bit. And if I was starting a backup Texans receiver, my preference is definitely Jalen Noel. He had 7 targets last week, way more than Higgins has had all year, and he caught 4 for 77. This passing game has value. The Niners defense is banged up. It's not a bad matchup. I like Jalen Noel the most, but maybe Xavier Hutchinson vultures some touchdowns. I am not going to look to Hutchinson. If I'm not picking up Noel, I would go Jaden Higgins. One of my favorites back in the offseason. One of my worst calls so far. Joe Mixon, though, still remains out. No update on Mixon at the moment. But safety Jimmy Ward still remains out as well with his injury. In the Niners offense, Brock Purdy, the quarterback, remains out with a toe injury, but he was limited all week in practice, and he will return at some point. Maybe it'll be next week in week 9, but in week 10, they face off against the Rams, I believe, at home, and I could see that as the main target for his return. I'm sure they'd like to be fully healthy for that matchup. So for one more week, Mac Jones gets the start, maybe even longer, but at least one more game. And that does benefit Kendrick Bourne, who has much better chemistry with Mac than Purdy. So I'm not dying to start Bourne. It's a terrible matchup for both the quarterback and receiver against Houston, but at least we know who the quarterback is. Ricky Pearsall remains out, so that's also helping Kendrick Bourne a little bit, but I have no idea when Pearsall's coming back. He did not practice at all this week, and that's his 4th missed game. They didn't put him on IR, but they could have, and maybe he comes back next week, but I really have no idea on the status of Ricky Pearsall. But Juwan Jennings is active. He was full this week, so that's positive news. And then Brandon Ayuk still remains out, but according to reports, next week in practice, I think they're going to open his 21-day window to come off of IR. So he's not probably going to play in week 9. Maybe he plays in week 10, but in my opinion, week 11 is probably the target return for Ayuk. But in reality, it could still be in week 12. You have 3 weeks to practice without playing. It sounds like he'll start practicing in week 9. So Ayuk coming back soon, but not this week. And then on their offensive line, center Jack Brendel is out, so that's important. Defensive end Bryce Huff and Gross Matos, both of them are out for this game again, and they're both playing behind Nick Bosa, who is on IR. Their defense is depleted, but Fred Warner is on IR as well. Trey Tomlinson also on IR, the cornerback not available. And then cornerback Diamador Lenore is questionable for this game. If he does not play, then I would trust Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel a little bit more without him. He's a very good player, perhaps their most talented option, given who else is out. But lastly, linebacker Luke Gifford is also questionable. The Niners defense will probably be injured all season. In the Colts-Titans game, let's talk about Indianapolis, who are also reeling in the secondary. It's pretty shocking, but Charvarius Ward was placed on IR with a concussion. Rarely do concussions last more than 1 or 2 games, let alone a minimum of 4. Last week, he was not on IR, so he'll be out at least 5 games with this concussion that happened pre-game when somebody was like running a route and ran into him. It's pretty crazy that happened with Charvarius Ward. But their cornerback, Jalen Jones, has been on IR and is expected to come off of it and play. So at least they're getting some help there. But then on defensive end, Samson Ebukam and Tyquan Lewis, both defensive linemen, are out. On offense, the Colts are fully healthy. Josh Downs was in the concussion protocol, but he will play. Everybody else is good to go for Indianapolis. For the Titans, Calvin Ridley remains out with that hamstring injury, so Ayamanor, Chimeri DK, and Van Jefferson will get a slight bump, but I don't trust them. It's really random to pick the right one. The matchup is elite, though. The Colts secondary is very injured, so sadly it's wasted. Perhaps Chigokonkwo does pique your interest, however. But On their defense, cornerback L'Jarius Sneed was placed on IR. He'll miss at least 4 games, and that does help Michael Pittman and Josh Downs a bit. But defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons is also out. I would argue he is their best player overall, so that is not good. The Colts are going to roll over them. And then guard Blake Hance on the offensive line is out for the second week in a row. And then linebacker Arden Key has been questionable for weeks now, is also questionable again. And same with safety Xavier Woods, also questionable for this matchup. In the Chiefs-Commanders game, Kansas City is without left tackle Josh Simmons yet again. He's out with a personal situation, and I don't think they need him, but he is by far their best offensive lineman. Right guard Trey Smith is also doubtful, so on the O-line, they're a bit depleted right now. We know that's kind of their weakness, but I'm not sure the Commanders have the scariest defensive line where they can exploit that. They're good on defensive line. They have Von Miller among other players, but I'm not really changing my opinion on the Chiefs offense and my expectations. I still think Mahomes will be lights out. Otherwise, though, their defense is healthy, and same with the offense. All the playmakers in fantasy are good to go. For the Commanders, Jaden Daniels, the quarterback, is out, and they're hopeful it's only 1 game missed, but I have no idea. He's already missed 3 games, including this one this year. So Mariota will get the start. That's bad news for the offense overall. It's nowhere near as high upside with Mariota under center. So if anything, that just helps the Kansas City defense, but we've assumed this all week. It was just confirmed yesterday, so my ranking on the Chiefs defense does not change. But interestingly enough, Terry McLaurin will return to the lineup. He was full in practice all week, and he is good to go with that quad injury. But so is Deebo Samuel, nursing that heel injury. He was full in practice on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday as well. And so at least both top 2 receivers will play in this matchup. That's definitely critical for their offense. So maybe they got a shot, but in reality, I hate this matchup for both of them. I don't trust Mariota. I only think it makes Zach Ertz much less interesting. I don't think you can start Ertz at all in a bad matchup with Terry and Deebo coming back. So he had a touchdown last week, but I do not trust Zach Ertz this week. And then at kicker, Matt Gay is also questionable. So maybe you're starting the Commanders kicker, but I doubt many people roster him. He is dealing with a back injury, did not practice on Saturday, but they have not upgraded anyone from the practice squad. So he is their only kicker on the roster. If he doesn't suit up and they don't change things, then they would be relying on punter Tress Way to be the guy. I doubt Matt Gay will miss if they don't make any roster moves. I think Matt Gay will suit up, but not a lock. Didn't practice today. And then on defense, Dorrance Armstrong has been placed on IR, but it's been confirmed this week he will be out for the entire year, not coming back in 2025. Their defensive tackle, Daron Payne, is also questionable, but otherwise their defense is healthy overall. The Saints and Bucks game in New Orleans, there is nothing to report except for Kendry Miller being on IR. That does help Taysom Hill and Devin Neal get a few extra rush attempts with his absence, but otherwise they're fully healthy. The Saints are good to go. And then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we know, are very injured on offense. They got Mike Evans placed on IR with a collarbone injury. Maybe he comes back in like week 16 or 17, but odds are his season might be over. Chris Godwin remains out yet again. He's ruled week to week, so not sure when he comes back, but they're at least not putting him on IR. He might play next week, but not going to suit up in week 8. Against New Orleans. I doubt they really need him, though. At least Emeka Egbuka is fully active. He was questionable going into last week, but did play, and he was full in practice. He is off the injury report. Egbuka is good to go. So with no Evans and Godwin, he gets the main bump, but I also like the target share increasing for Cade Otton, Tez Johnson, and Sterling Shepard. It's hard to trust Tez Johnson or Shepard, but I think Cade Otton is a very interesting option on National Tight Ends Day, given the injuries to Evans and Godwin. But at running back, Bucky Irving remains out. He did not practice at all this week. He was ruled out on Wednesday. They knew early on he was not coming back. So Rachaad White should have a big bounce back. The matchup's much better this week than it was against the Lions. And there is also no update on wide receiver Jalen McMillan. They were optimistic he would play at some point this year, but at the moment remains on IR. It's been almost half the year, and I remember reading they were hopeful it would be about 9-10 weeks before McMillan could come back. So given Evans and Godwin are so banged up, I could see McMillan have value, but at the moment he remains on IR. I don't think I'm willing to pick him up just yet, but next week I might be more interested in stashing him. If they open his practice window, then I would pick up Jalen McMillan. For now, I'll leave him on the waiver wire, but perhaps you're in a super deep format and you want to be more proactive than I am. But on the O-line, right guard Luke Haggard has been ruled out, and then on defense, linebacker Hassan Reddick is also out, and then nose tackle Vita Vea is questionable. If Vita Vea does not play, then perhaps Taysom Hill will have that breakout game that, to be honest, I kind of feel is coming. My spidey sense is tingling, and I feel like Taysom Hill could have a big breakout, but in all honesty, all transparency, I am not bold enough to pick up Taysom Hill and start him, but I do think his time is coming. I do think he'll be relevant pretty soon. Last game to mention would be the Giants and Eagles matchup, and for the Giants, we know that Malik Neighbors is on IR, out for the year, but they are getting Darius Slayton back. He was active and full in practice on Friday, so off the injury report, Darius Slayton will play, and I do think that helps Jackson Dart a little bit. I don't love this matchup, but Slayton does have deep threat upside, and perhaps that does take away some value from both Wan'Dale Robinson and Theo Johnson, especially Daniel Bellinger, who is filling in as well. So that's a weird situation. I don't really trust anyone other than Wan'Dale Robinson this week. The matchup's also terrible for the tight ends, and maybe he stays healthy all year, but dealing with that hamstring injury, it could crop up again. Let's pump the brakes on Slayton this week, but a name to keep an eye out on, perhaps next week. He's a very coveted waiver wire claim. On defense, linebacker Brian Burns is questionable as well, and cornerback Paulson Adebo, along with free safety Javon Holland, both of them have been ruled out. So some missing pieces on defense, but at least Slayton is coming back. For the Eagles, wide receiver A.J. Brown, out with a hamstring injury, did not practice at all, and there were reports that they were expecting him to play, according to RotoWire, back on Wednesday. So I don't know what the fuck's going on. Not ideal at all. Maybe he's just moping, or maybe he's literally really in pain. I do not know, but I do know A.J. Brown will not play. So that's a major upgrade for Devontae Smith, a lock in the lineup this week. Same for Dallas Goedert. You got to start both of them. And then Jahan Dotson actually becomes a very interesting flex option, given there's 6 teams on bye and a plethora of injuries. I could see Jahan Dotson actually have some value. So he's in that like Jaden Higgins type of tier, similar like Kayshon Boutte. You're hoping for a big touchdown, but if you got 7 targets and 5 catches, wouldn't be that shocked with Jahan Dotson this week. There is a lot of volume up for grabs with no A.J. Brown. But on the offensive line, center Cam Jurgens has been ruled out. On defense, linebackers Azeez Ojulari and Brandon Graham, both of them have been ruled out. However, Nolan Smith is on IR until week 10. They're expecting him back in week 10 against the Packers. So 2 more games without Nolan Smith. And then thankfully, Jalen Carter is active. He missed the last game against the Eagles, and perhaps that's the missing piece to stop Cam Skattebo. Lastly, cornerback Adoree Jackson is also out for the Eagles. That is all of the players to mention. That is it for the injury report. And let's update my rankings overall. Let's start at running back, where I'm really not changing very much. I'm just getting a little more pessimistic on Derrick Henry. I dropped Henry down 4 spots overall. You cannot tell me that the Ravens offense is going to have as much upside without Lamar Jackson. He played well against the Rams, so I still think you're going to start Henry if you have him. However, he's kind of just coasting on name value. I could see him shit the bed. I could also see him have 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. I would still start him in the top 12. I think you have to, but I dropped him down 4 spots because Lamar Jackson is not going to play. The offense is just not the same without Lamar. Otherwise, I flip-flopped on 2 players. At 16 and 17, I did swap Quinshon Judkins and Jaylen Warren in the rankings. The matchup is bad for both of them, especially for Quinshon. However, he's more talented than Jaylen Warren. I expect more volume overall to go to Judkins. So I'm a bit worried neither score a touchdown. This late in the rankings feels kind of gross, given there's 6 teams on bye. Even running back 16 doesn't feel that safe this week, but I think I'd rather go Judkins than Jaylen Warren. Otherwise, though, I didn't change a thing at running back. Everything else is the same. There are no new injuries at running back since I posted the video on Wednesday. The rankings have not changed at running back, other than Henry moving down 4 spots and Judkins and Warren swapping at 16, 17. So let's move on to the position that really had a lot of changes. I should probably just wait until Friday to rank receivers moving forward, because the injuries, to assume I know all of the information on Thursday or Wednesday, it's just not happening lately. There's so many players banged up. I've changed a lot just today. So let's show you the changes. We removed 3 players that I did rank in the top 10. I considered AJ Brown, Nico Collins, and Garrett Wilson must starts if active, but none of them will suit up. So because they've been taken out, everyone behind Drake London and Keenan Allen did move up 3 spots. But I bumped up Devontae Smith 9 spots overall. I think with no AJ Brown, he is a lock in the lineup. Last week, he was amazing. I think Devontae Smith is going to pop off yet again. I think they will beat the Giants pretty comfortably. The matchup is bad, and maybe it's a competitive game, but if anything, that just helps the passing volume they will need to keep up if the Giants are competitive. So love Devontae Smith. The volume is locked in this week, and he does have top 7 upside. Whenever AJ Brown is off the field, Devontae Smith, I remember looking up this stat in the preseason, averages roughly like 17.3, 17 and a half points per game. He is a top 7 wide receiver locked in when AJ Brown is off the field. So he's top 5 for me in my ranks this week. You have to start Devontae if you have him. And then Emeka Egbuka, I think, is safer than Drake London, and especially Keenan Allen. That's for sure. Given I know he practiced this week and he's fully active, I'm not going to worry about Egbuka at all. And given Drake London was added to the injury report today, I have to downgrade him a little bit. I'd rather go Egbuka than Drake London. But I do think London will suit up. If he doesn't, then you have to bench him. And I will let you know my contingent rank on Mooney if that happens. But I do assume London suits up. If you have London, you know if he's ready to go, you have to start him. There's no way you're benching London if you have him and he plays. So moves down behind Devontae and Egbuka 2 spots overall, but it's only the hesitation that maybe he isn't active, maybe isn't available. Otherwise, Cortland Sutton and Rome Odunze enter my top 10, and then everything is kind of the same. I didn't change any other rankings on the players up until Chris Olave. I upgraded Chris Olave 3 spots overall. He moves up 6 spots technically because 3 players were taken out. So he's jumping guys like Michael Pittman and Stephon Diggs. I think he's a very safe play. In the last 2 games, he does have over 90 yards. He's probably a lock in the lineup if you have him. So the volume is just too good. He's a clear top 20 option, and I think I ranked him just a little bit too low earlier in the week. But beyond this tier, at number 20, I did bump up Khalil Shakir significantly in this tier. I think betting on Josh Allen and the Bills offense is probably one of the wisest moves this week. I think they will get right. I think they drop a lot of points on the Panthers, and I trust Shakir to be his go-to option. And there's also the chance that Kincaid might not play. So Shakir is a bust-proof option in general, very safe 9-point floor generally, and I would expect a touchdown to have higher odds this week if Kincaid doesn't play. So a top 20 receiver at the top of this tier. I previously had him near the bottom, but with 3 players getting taken out, he actually moves up 7 spots overall from 27 to 20. So gonna start Shakir with confidence, my favorite flex play in this tier. And then given the injury to Matthew Golden and Christian Watson coming back, Wicks being out, I trust Romeo Doubs the most. So I do see Jordan Love playing well. I do see value in the Packers receiving core this week. I like Romeo Doubs the most. I think at 21, he is a safe flex option with upside. I could see an easy touchdown for him against Joey Porter Jr. or Jalen Ramsey. I think he'll play well against Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. Otherwise, though, I'm sticking with Ted McMillan and Wandale over Josh Downs. Those guys stay put. Overall, though, I am vaulting Jalen Noel up in the rankings. I previously had him at 36, so he moves up 11 spots total, up to number 25. I would be starting Jalen Noel with confidence. With no Nico Collins, I see the most volume for him other than Dalton Schultz, and I trust the floor. I think Noel is a very safe play. He's already been stepping up with no Christian Kirk, so his role isn't going anywhere. I could see Jaden Higgins really let you down. Noel, I think, is ready to play, and he's my favorite Texans receiver this week. I am starting him in the subscriber league. I picked him up on Thursday because it looked like Nico wasn't going to be available. So Noel is my guy. Definitely going to start him this week with confidence. And at 25, I recommend you do as well. At 26, though, I dropped Zay Flowers by 6 spots overall. He's still in the flex conversation. I still think he has upside, but to tell me you feel as confident without Lamar Jackson would be a lie. There's no way you trust him as much with Cooper Rush. So he was okay with Rush in that first game with him, had 70 yards again, but I don't expect a touchdown anymore. And there's still the potential that he completely collapses with less than 20 yards. So Flowers, a bit of a liability, definitely boom bust, but loses upside with no Lamar, moves down 6 spots overall, and technically 9 spots compared to his peers because he should be moving up 3 spots with those other guys taken out. So in reality, I'm way less confident in Flowers, but because there are so many teams unavailable and injured, I still have him in the top 26. I would still consider him a high upside flex play. Beyond 26, though, I have Waddle, Worthy, Terry, and Debo, and they just move up 3 spots because of the injured players getting taken out. However, I feel way more confident in Darnell Mooney if Kirk Cousins is the quarterback. So assuming Cousins is the guy, I like the connection way more for Mooney compared to Penix. He has not played well with Penix compared to his stats last year with Cousins. So there's established chemistry. He's healthy. I think Mooney is good to go. I think he has a good floor and legit upside. And this rank assumes that Drake London is going to play. So at 31, I already consider Mooney a pretty interesting flex option. However, if you told me that London isn't going to play, I would bump up Mooney above Stephon Diggs. Darnell Mooney would become my wide receiver 18, right behind Michael Pittman and Chris Olave. I would rather go Darnell Mooney than Stephon Diggs. I think the volume will be similar, the upside's the same, and I actually prefer the touchdown likelihood for Mooney compared to Diggs against the Browns. So love Mooney this week. If London doesn't play, I love him even more. I am telling you to flex Mooney knowing Kirk Cousins is probably the quarterback. If you tell me it's Penix, I'll drop him down like 5 spots or so. He'll stay in the top 40, but not in this tier. However, with Cousins, I trust him even more. I like Mooney's upside a lot, assuming Cousins plays and especially if London is inactive. So if he's still on the waiver wire, you have to pick up Mooney as a handcuff to London. Very valuable piece right now. And then I also feel like I was ranking Troy Franklin a bit too low. And with the confirmation that Trayvon Diggs is placed on IR, he's not going to play, I would trust Franklin even more. So he moves up 4 spots in the rankings and then an extra 3. So I previously had him around wide receiver 40. Now he's my wide receiver 32. And I am telling you to flex him if you need him. Inside the top 34, above the black line. That is my bench territory cutoff point. And I would start Franklin in a pinch. But I'd rather go Mooney. I'd rather go with Jalen Noel. My favorite off the wire is Jalen Noel in Houston. But otherwise, Matthew Golden is moving down 6 spots with his injury and Christian Watson coming back. I'm not as confident in Matthew Golden, just more confident in Romeo Doubs. And then DJ Moore, still very underwhelming. Didn't change my opinion on DJ Moore. But Kendrick Bourne, I think, is less safe. The matchup is just so bad. And I originally was ranking him like at the top of the tier and Juwan at the bottom of the tier. I think they're much closer to each other. With Juwan getting healthy, I have them now back to back, and I'm not sure who Derek Stingley will match up against, but if I had to guess, it would be Juwan. So that's why I rank him below Kendrick, but Bourne has played well with Mac Jones. This matchup is terrible, though. I'd just rather bench both of them. So not excited, but I did lower my rank on Bourne, upgrade my rank on Juwan Jennings, and then Rashid Shaheed I previously had above Keon Coleman. I'd rather go Keon in Buffalo than Shaheed in New Orleans. I trust Josh Allen a bit more. So that rank was just incorrect. I swapped Shaheed and Keon, and then Shaheed gets jumped by Juwan Jennings as well. That's why he moves down 2 spots, not just 1. But otherwise, I would be shooting for some upside with some optimism. I'd be looking for house calls and touchdown potential. So Calvin Austin, Kayshon Boutte, Marvin Mims, Jahan Dotson, and Christian Watson are my preference in this tier. And I did upgrade my opinion on Kayshon Boutte. The Browns actually kind of struggle with some deep passes, so Boutte does get looks down the field, does have upside this week. Not a terrible start. And then Mims in a great matchup, I think, is closer to Troy Franklin than I originally ranked him. So I had him at like 50 earlier, now at 41. I think he's more safe, especially with no Trayvon Diggs. I could see a big house call go to Mims against a backup corner. So I like him much more. Jahan Dotson is very interesting, but I think I'd still rather go with Kayshon Boutte and Marvin Mims. And then Christian Watson, also super tempting, especially if Golden doesn't play. But given it's his first game back, I'll pump the brakes at 43. I think I'll pass on Christian Watson. But I did rank Tez Johnson a little bit higher. I think I like the upside more than Sterling Shepard, so lowered my rank on Shepard, upgraded Tez Johnson. And then a player I completely dropped in the rankings by almost 20 spots here would be Alec Pierce. I only ranked him at 28 with the option that Josh Downs wouldn't play. If Downs was ruled out with his concussion, then Pierce would have been one of my favorite flex plays this week. But Downs will play, so I'll start Downs. I'll bench Alec Pierce. He moves down to wide receiver 45. Back on Thursday, I had him ranked at 28. So not going to start Alec Pierce. Not safe anymore with Josh Downs coming back. And then in the top 50, I did upgrade Jaden Higgins to 49. But I don't trust Higgins. He hasn't played well yet, and he could shit the bed again. I don't trust him at the moment. I would much rather go Jalen Noel. I rank him at 25. I have Higgins at 49, but he does move up 6 spots. And then I changed my tune on the Titans pass catchers. I still prefer Ayamanor, but not by a full tier. I have Ayamanor at 50, Chimeri DK moving up right behind him, and it's really a flip of a coin which one is the guy you want. The matchup is good, but I don't trust Cam Ward at the moment, so not going to start either Titans receiver, sadly, in a great matchup. But I did rank Allen Lazard 10 spots higher. Previously, I did not rank any other backup Jets receiver, and I would rather go Josh Reynolds, but Reynolds isn't going to play either, so Lazard would be the guy. At 52, though, I'm not going to start Allen Lazard. I got more optimistic on Tez Johnson and more pessimistic on Sterling Shepard, so I ranked Shepard much lower, 6 spots down. And then the last player entering the mix in this top 60 that previously was not ranked is Demario Douglas, the last name I'll mention. But at number 58, I doubt you're starting Demario Douglas. So those are my receiver updates. Now let's talk about the quarterback position, where I am assuming Justin Fields will play. That looks to be the case with no Tyrod Taylor. They don't have anyone else. So I do think Justin Fields would be a good streaming option. I still prefer Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love, but I have Fields now at number 13. I'd still rather go Dak Prescott and Drake May, but it is the same tier as them. However, Caleb Williams has been falling off, and I like the matchup more for Justin Fields. So he's my new quarterback 13. I previously had him unranked, so moves up 15 spots overall. And you could do much worse than Fields. Very good matchup, very high upside, especially running the ball. I think he could go over 100 yards this week. So I like Justin Fields for the upside, but not the floor. Still a bit risky. At 13, you could do better. I'd rather go Aaron Rodgers. But above the black line, I do consider him a viable streaming candidate. If you have to replace Lamar Jackson, I'd rather go Rodgers, but give me Justin Fields as a backup plan. Otherwise, though, I have the same opinion on the Falcons starter, whoever is the guy, whether it's Michael Penix or Kirk Cousins. I have that player ranked at 15. So a contingent rank here on Cousins. I still don't know if Penix will play, but I don't think he will. He's a game time decision, and it's not sounding too good. If he is inactive, I would have Cousins in the exact same spot. Neither run the ball. Offense is going to be similar, but if London doesn't play, it's going to be weird. I could see some bad risk. That's why I'm not telling you to start them outright. Below the black line, there's still some bust potential. So at 15, whether it's Penix or Kirk Cousins, I'd rather go Fields, but if you're forced to, that's fine with me, going Cousins in a pinch. But otherwise, I did rank Andy Dalton 2 spots higher because I felt like Gabriel was ranked too high, so he moves down 2 spots. And then I did rank Cooper Rush at 23. I'm not going to start Cooper Rush. That's for sure. Rush has been really bad when he's been the starter. So no thanks there, but I would start Justin Fields in the top 15 this week. At tight end, I think Kyle Pitts would be a bit more interesting if you told me Drake London doesn't play. So if London doesn't suit up, Pitts would be my tight end 15, which maybe you'll have to start. You could do better, though. I'd rather go Mason Taylor for sure. But if Drake London is active, then Pitts will fall back down to tight end 20. But because Lamar isn't going to play, I am not starting Mark Andrews. Fuck that shit. I dropped Mark Andrews down by 14 spots. He is not the same player without Lamar, so not in my top 10 anymore. I previously had him at number 6, and now at number 20. Fuck that. Mark Andrews, not a safe play at all. But I did remove Isaiah Likely at 25, so Theo Johnson moves up in his place at 25. Bad matchup for Theo Johnson. Last update, though, is at defense, where the Bears are now, I think, a must start. I bumped him up 16 spots because Lamar Jackson is not going to play. So the Cooper Rush experience, way more exciting for fantasy purposes. I trust the Bears defense a lot more. So now they're my number 5 defense. I'd rather go with the Bears than the Chiefs, the Texans, and anybody other than the Bucks, Pats, Colts, and Falcons. At number 5 against Rush, I think the Bears are a very good start. So those are all of my updated rankings. Here on the screen is quarterback, tight end, and defense. Mainly the big change would be the Bears upgrading and Justin Fields entering the top 15 while Lamar has been taken out. He was previously my quarterback 1. So those are really the only players moving up or down, but I think you could do much worse than Fields or the Bears defense. And then now I'll show you my flex rankings, the top 40 at running back and wide receiver. And honestly, I think once you pass Kimani Vidal beyond the black line, I would much rather go with wide receiver. I see some upside for guys like Harvey and Monungai and even Algier, but it's not a safe proposition. If Vita Vea doesn't play, then maybe Kamara's safer, but yikes, no thank you if I can pass. So I'd much rather go with like Rashid Shaheed, to be honest with you, than Alvin Kamara. It's a weird week this week. I could also pivot to tight end with confidence. It is National Tight Ends Day. I would genuinely consider Mason Taylor, who is my tight end 11, as valuable this week as someone like Woody Marks. I think Mason Taylor has a higher ceiling than Woody Marks, my running back 20. So I would consider him a decent flex play. I think all those tight ends in the top 20 actually has some viability in your lineup if you're desperate at flex. But that's going to be it for this video. Oh wait, there is one last thing. Before I go, let me finalize my win-loss picks. I am moving off of the Ravens. I'm not going to pick Baltimore with Cooper Rush. Maybe their defense really plays well, but I don't see it. I'm going to trust Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. And I think the Bears defense has been playing well lately. They can run it down your throat with DeAndre Swift and Monungai. So I think they'll dominate time of possession. I do not trust the Ravens anymore. And their defense has been dog shit this year. I don't trust him at all. So give me the Bears to win. Sadly, the Ravens, I think, will fall to 1-6. However, some picks against the spread. I'm not changing any teams that I gave you, but over the week, there have been 2 lines that have gotten slightly less difficult. The Falcons I had at -7.5 previously. The line is down to -7. Give me the Falcons in the updated line. I'll take the push if I can get it. Give me Falcons -7 over the Dolphins. And then lastly, the only other update I will make is the Cowboys line has increased to Dallas +3.5. They are even bigger underdogs, and I think they'll win straight up. But now I can avoid the push possibility. If it's a 3-point game, I can still eke out a win against the spread. So Cowboys +3.5, Falcons +7. Those are the 2 updates against the spread. And lastly, I'm taking the Bears to win straight up over Baltimore. But oh my God, I was so tempted to take the Bengals over the Jets. I feel like I'm just willing to play with fire this week. Give me the Jets. I'm going to stick with the Jets pick over Cincinnati. But that's it for this video. That is officially the end of the video. And this one went a bit long, but I think valuable information all throughout. The receiver position, I think I will be ranking on Friday going forward. We're getting more accurate practice reps later in the week. And I don't want to have to update this many players in the video. So I'll be changing the schedule next week. Look out for that. But I'll see you next time. My name's Adam Riancho, and I hope you get the win. Good luck in week 8. And thank you for watching. Nice and blunt.